Imagine a universe where women from different continents gather through time and distance to share their stories without limitation of demographics, language, culture, or circumstances. And through sharing those stories, they come together to create a cross cultural anthology that serves as a microcosm for a better version of our planet. This bridge called Woman was created to set us on that path.
The project started in December of 2019 when Hilda Twanjere and Regina Asinai came to visit from Uganda.
This bridge called Woman is not only a child of FEMRITE and Women's Wisdom Art, but a child of IVLP as well, the International Visitors Leadership Program of the United States Department of State, and Women for Women Awards in Kampala, too gave us the opportunity to travel and experience other spaces.
For several hours, we talked about women, we talked about writing, we talked about the power of these stories and how to bring other writers and other women's voices who weren't writers into the fold.
The warmth of the women that we met in that space, Vicky, Ali of course, Yvonne, Sharon and others, threw us back to the FEMRITE small space on Chila Road in Kampala. We felt so at home, we felt so welcome, we talked, we listened to one another, we shared hot cups of tea and coffee, we laughed like old friends.
And identifying the storytellers was a huge part of the project. It took months to figure out, first of all, who we would invite. From the US side, I looked to the Sacramento area, and I looked to people who I saw were leaders, either known or unknown, perceived or unperceived, and I wanted a diverse range. Hilda pretty much did the same thing on her side. She looked for academics, she looked for women who were leaders in their own right. I had a list of 20 writers and did a lot of talking about what the project would entail, what it would look like. In Uganda, they found writers pretty quickly.
I was a little intimidated when Ali asked me to be a part of this project. I had never written nonfiction, particularly a biographical style nonfiction piece. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to write the story in an authentic way because, again, I'm primarily a fiction writer.
And she brought this opportunity to write to me and to do a memoir of someone. I was just so excited about it at the thought of learning about a new person, learning their stories, and to be able to authentically represent themselves.
And Hilda and I sat on the phone or on Zoom or on WhatsApp for hours over weeks, pairing up writers with storytellers and finding ways they would be a good match or they wouldn't be a good match.
Well, I thought it was a wonderful idea, and I was excited especially about doing it with Uganda. I felt that my own story kind of intersected with some of that in terms of loving Africa and having visited it myself. And on the other hand, I also felt humbled.
My first instinct was to say, no, I'm too busy, I can't do this. But then when I looked at the email again, it was talking about being able to do outreach to women, that this project would help women, and that someone might actually benefit from hearing my story. So after reading it like the 10th time, I decided to say yes. And so I was paired up with a young lady from Uganda, which I thought was really interesting because I'm originally from Uganda. I've been in this country over 30 years, but originally from Uganda. I was born in Uganda, still have family there. So there was a certain level of familiarity because I could just imagine where she was at. But at the same time, yes, I was telling my story to a stranger. So it was difficult at first, but she was really good. And she asked me questions to clarify things, and by the end of it, we really had a good flow.
We were very, very grateful for a series of 3 writing classes.
I really appreciated the opportunity to take the Zoom classes through the Writer Center. It gave me a little bit more of a foundation in terms of how to write nonfiction, how to approach the interview process, and it was very helpful.
The biggest challenge I faced was that partway through our communications, Mary had to withdraw from the project for a change in her circumstances. And someone who's read my chapter will realize that Mary's story comes to a fairly abrupt end just when it should be getting going. I ended up doing a lot of internet research. I did find a wealth of information about FEMRITE and the history of FEMRITE. One thing I did to prepare that worked very well, and it seemed unthinkable not to do it, was to get some of the books she's written. And in one of our first exchanges, I let her know that I'd read The Invisible Weevil and The Switch. She seemed surprised, but she was also very pleased.
I think one of the biggest challenges for me was knowing that in her sharing her truth, sharing her story, that she actually was making herself vulnerable, not just to a small group of women who were working and fully supportive of one another, but to the world. And that in this particular woman's life, that it could put her life in danger, her career in danger. She was already taking such risks with being her authentic self, and also sharing that with her daughter. But I was excited about what she had learned from her grandmother, what she had learned through her own life experience, and what she was able to pass on down to her daughter and really represent for many of the future generations. I think that learning that we as women need, and we as a society need, about discovering who we are and how we want to show up in the world, and fighting for those things that are important to us, spending our time on them, and really exploring where we have differences, but being accepting of those differences and willing to find out those places that allow us to show up as our true selves and to find our tribe and to pursue our passion.
This was an incredible project to be a part of. It's full of inspiration and joy. And actually the woman storyteller that I had the privilege of interviewing, coming to know, and sharing her story was actually named Joy Kwesiga, Dr. Joy Kwesiga. We worked on it at the height of the COVID crisis, and it was, in a way, very strange to be meeting people halfway around the world at different times, late at night or early in the morning by Zoom, and getting to know people, and also discovery. You know, we had to discover quickly a lot of the background of Ugandan history, politics, and background in order to understand our subjects.
It was very reflective, because for many of the things that had happened long ago, I hadn't even thought about them for a long, long time. And then the more recent difficulties and challenges I've had during COVID, it was hard to remember some of the hard times, but I think she was really good in keeping the conversation going and making sure that she captured the major points.
I really enjoyed also telling the story to Flavia in Uganda, and we had a number of Zoom calls and struggles to have Zoom calls, and it was early in the morning for her and late at night for me, which is fine for me because I'm a night owl.
This project has been one of the interesting projects I've participated in. It has taught me to appreciate the power of storytelling. When we write or read or tell our stories, we get to understand, we get to know of other people's stories, and we appreciate the differences and the similarities in those stories. And those differences and similarities are the ones that empower us to own our own stories.
The compelling stories of Agnes Musoke and Dorcas Chillane show how the power of intentions can lead to compassionate action that strengthens communities. Dorcas Chillane is a powerhouse. She was severely injured in an accident as a child, but did not let that stop her from becoming a grassroots organizer, a community leader, and a foster parent to children in crisis. When Agnes explained to me that she is a pencil in God's hand, I knew that I had met a bold agent of change.
Upon meeting Sister Dipio, I knew right away that her story was going to be one that I could appreciate. We hit it off right away via Zoom. Her humor, her laughter, it was just contagious, and I just truly enjoyed connecting with her. I spent a lot of time listening to her stories, and she had many. So for me, it was, where do I begin? How do I narrow this rich life down to, 3,000 or 4,000 words?
One of the themes that came forward was really the power of story. Joy talked about the proverbs and the stories that her mother and her mother's women friends would tell while she was a girl in the village. And then she talked about how women's stories again, when she was working at the university, at Makerere University, it was a group of women sharing their stories that actually started the women's movement.
Not only did incredible women tell and write the stories that built this bridge called woman, 20 creative and accomplished women contributed artwork that beautifully represent the essence of the stories told.
Oh, wow. When Allie called and asked me to participate in this project, I was over the moon excited. I really, really was, because I'm a genealogist and an author also. And so family history is very important. And I have a series that I created, a couple of series. One is a goddess series, which is all about women empowerment. And the other is called Sisters Under the Skin. And it's sisters from all over the world, women from all over the world working together to heal the world. Because women are less warlike, and we are more collaborative, and we look at ideas for fixing things, for making the world better. That's what we do.
Art always created an environment for me that I could connect with people in a deeper way, and to also offer a way to explore your imagination and creativity.
I was so excited. I just almost could not contain myself. I looked at the beautiful cover of the book, and I love color. And I thumbed through trying to find my piece, and I opened the book to my artwork, and I couldn't believe it. And I saw everybody else's that was in there, and I started reading the stories, and I was so honored to be a part of this really important collaboration. One of the stories that was very difficult for me to digest about female circumcision, and I've known about that. I just didn't know it was still going on today. I didn't ever think about it so much, about the day-to-day and what that means. So that story was so tough, I had to put it down a bunch of times. And then I thought to myself, how dare I? I'm just a reader. These women lived it. They lived this process.
It has definitely touched my life in a very positive way, and I'm very grateful.
And in all, it was just a tremendous collaborative effort, and I was glad to have even a small part in it.
I got a very good relationship with my storyteller, Barbara Rain.
Being in that tree was like being with a sister or brother at the fireplace chatting. She would smile as the wind would be blowing the branches from side to side as she crawled to pick the nearest fruit to soothe her longings.
She said that when she comes to Africa, I'll be the first person she sees.
When I got a copy of the book, it was real. It was something we'd accomplished. And as I looked through it and read and looked at the incredible artwork, I was very, very proud.
I am very glad I said yes to Allie. It was a good experience, just narrating my story. And also actually after getting the book and reading the story of other women, it's such an encouragement to see how strong they can be through different challenges.
I was in a smaller world than normal, living in one room, working in one room, and I would turn on that computer and see Dr. Joy Kwesiga, and a whole world would open up. And I think that this project, it's a little bit of a metaphor for how this project can open up worlds of understanding and awareness. It can open up friendship and relationship that has an impact.
This bridge called Woman teaches us what can happen when everyday women pursue life with a steadfast intent despite struggles and setbacks, and refuse to allow those struggles and setbacks to stunt their growth. While creating this bridge called Woman, we said goodbye to artist Gloria Grandi and storyteller Luz Marie Gama. We're forever grateful to them for their presence within the pages of this bridge called Woman.